A few days after we settled into our new home, the doorbell rang loudly, echoing through the house. I unlocked the door, and before I could react, it swung open forcefully. "Why haven't you invited us over since moving into your new house?" It was my mother-in-law standing on the doorstep. Behind her, my husband pushed me aside, looking surprised. Without waiting for an invitation, my mother-in-law stepped into the house, taking in the surroundings. "It's a nice place with a garden. Quite tasteful, surprisingly, given your lack of housekeeping skills. But I suppose even you can be useful occasionally," she commented. "Now, where's my room? This one looks like it gets plenty of sunlight." I bit back a laugh at her cheerful tone. How carefree she was, acting as if we were close. But the truth was, we were strangers. "There isn't a room for you here," I said, keeping my voice steady. Her face twisted in shock. "How can you say such a terrible thing to a family member?" "If you apologize now, I'll forgive you," my husband yelled, his face turning red. My mother-in-law smirked in agreement. It was ridiculous. A meaningless threat. I sighed and then showed them something. The moment they saw it, both my mother-in-law and husband froze. "You can't be serious. You can't divorce me," my husband stammered. "I'm already single," I replied calmly. "My name is Avery. I was married to Daniel for 5 years, ever since we met at university. He had proposed strongly, and I had accepted, hoping for a happy marriage. But things were different from what I had expected. Daniel always put his mother's opinion first, even for the smallest decisions. He'd say, 'I'll ask my mom,' for everything, from where we should go on our honeymoon to which dentist we should visit, even down to the color of the bedroom curtains. He consulted her on everything and followed her advice without question. I was concerned about his behavior, but I chose to ignore it. Despite my dissatisfaction with the situation, our marriage wasn't terrible. Daniel helped with simple chores like taking out the trash, though he complained about it. On weekends, we'd dine out or take trips, and he always remembered our anniversaries and birthdays with gifts. As long as I turned a blind eye to my mother-in-law's interference, Daniel seemed like a decent husband. However, everything changed after my father-in-law passed away. Our once stable marriage began to unravel. "Avery, can we talk?" Daniel asked one evening as we sat down to dinner. "What's wrong?" I replied, sensing the tension in his voice. "Can we live with my mother?" I stared at him, stunned. "What? Why?" "It's not sudden," he said defensively. "I've been thinking about it since Dad passed away. Mom's all alone now. Understand that it's inconvenient for her to be alone, and I'm worried about her," Daniel began, his voice tinged with concern. "I know, but I really don't want to live with her. Bella is still capable, she can manage on her own," I replied. "Besides, her house is less than 20 minutes away from ours. If you're worried, we can visit her regularly." "No, you don't understand," Daniel insisted. "Even if she seems fine, anything could happen. What if she suddenly collapses? No one would be there to help, and it could be too late. Can you take responsibility for that?" I felt a lump in my throat. I don't want anything bad to happen to her either. "If you refuse to live with her, I'll have no choice but to divorce you," he said, his tone serious. I stared at him in disbelief. "You're really going to do that?" "I'm serious," he affirmed. "Okay, let me think about it," I reluctantly agreed, feeling cornered. After several tense discussions, we ultimately decided to move in with his mother. Bella, Daniel's mother, had a tendency to nitpick about everything, and Daniel always obeyed her. I knew living with her wouldn't be easy for me, but I was pregnant at the time. I convinced myself that it would be better for the baby to have both parents present, so I reluctantly agreed. I also believed that moving in with Bella wouldn't change my relationship with Daniel. I had faith in the bond we had built over the years, but reality proved otherwise. As soon as we moved in, Bella wasted no time in making life difficult for me. Instead of supporting me during my pregnancy, she left all the housework to me while she spent her days socializing with her friends. When she finally returned home, she would find fault with everything I did. Despite my efforts to clean and cook while dealing with pregnancy fatigue, nothing was ever good enough for her. I tried explaining, hoping she would understand, given her own experiences as a mother. But instead she would snap, "Young people these days are so lazy. When I was your age, I managed everything, even when I was sick." She'd point out the slightest imperfections. "Look at the water stains. And the laundry. It's not even ironed properly. You should be making at least 3 side dishes per meal. Are you trying to starve me and my sweet boy?" Her constant criticism was relentless, and there were days when I had to redo chores despite feeling unwell. Eventually, I couldn't take it any longer and confided in Daniel, hoping for support. "Sure, some things Mom says are harsh, but it's your fault for not doing your chores properly," he said dismissively. "Don't blame her for that." But there are days when it's hard to even stand up. It's impossible to do everything perfectly when I'm feeling like that. I tried to reason with him. "My mom managed when she was younger," he retorted, his loyalty to her unwavering. "When she was pregnant with me, she managed everything, so there's no reason why you can't do it too," Daniel said dismissively. "Health varies from person to person, Daniel," I replied, frustration simmering. "Besides, your mother is out all day and night socializing. This apartment was ours first, and she doesn't contribute to any of the bills. I need you to ask her to help with the housework until I'm feeling better." He sighed, clearly annoyed. "You're the one who agreed to move in with my mother. If you have a problem with her, we can always get a divorce." His tone was confident, as if he believed I'd never go through with it. I sighed as well, sensing the growing distance between us. Daniel wasn't like this before we moved in with his mother. But now, between his attitude, my mother-in-law's constant criticism, and my declining health, I was starting to feel the strain on our marriage. Then one day, like clockwork, my mother-in-law went out to spend time with her friends, leaving me alone in the house to do the chores. I felt a bit better than usual, so I decided to be more thorough with the cleaning. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, and I thought today might finally be a good day. But just as I was finishing up, my mother-in-law burst through the door, her face twisted in anger. "Belle, what's wrong?" I asked, startled. "Everything is wrong," she shouted. "My clothes are ruined." "What?" "But I wash them like I always do," I replied, confused. "These are expensive clothes that need to be hand-washed. How dare you put them in the washing machine? Look at the state of them. Completely ruined. These were my favorites. What are you going to do about this?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "But Belle, you never told me they needed special care," I said, trying to stay calm. "You should know without me having to tell you," she snapped, completely losing control. At that moment, Daniel walked in from work, and I knew things were about to get even worse. "I'm home." "What's going on?" Daniel asked as he walked in. "Welcome back, Daniel," Bella cried out, rushing over to him. "Look at my clothes. They were so expensive, and now they're ruined." Before I could explain, my mother-in-law thrust the damaged clothes into Daniel's hands. "These are the ones you like to see me in, right?" Daniel frowned as he examined the clothes. "Avery, you can't even manage something as simple as laundry." "Your mother never told me they needed to be hand-washed," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I admit I should have checked, but Bella's at fault too for not mentioning it." Daniel's expression hardened. "It's my fault for putting up with your attitude, but if you're going to blame my mom, then I'm done. I don't want a wife who can't even do housework. Get out of here." He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of paper, slamming it down on the dining room table with a smug smile. It was a set of divorce papers with Daniel's section already filled out. "You should think about fixing that attitude of yours in the future," he said coldly. Then, without another word, Daniel turned to leave, taking his mother with him. "Hey, where are you going?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We're going out to eat," Daniel replied over his shoulder. "I'm not letting my mom eat that cold, nasty food you made, and I'm not eating it either." As they walked out, Bella glanced back at me, a victorious smirk on her face. I had been holding back for so long, telling myself it was for the sake of our baby. But seeing that smug expression on my mother-in-law's face, and hearing Daniel mock me so cruelly, I felt a surge of uncontrollable anger and sadness. Daniel had always put his mother first, but he had never treated me with such disdain. How had things gone so wrong? I stared at the divorce papers left behind on the table, feeling utterly helpless. At that moment, my smartphone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. As I reached into my pocket, I felt my phone vibrating. I checked the screen and saw that it was my mother calling. "Hi Avery, how are you doing?" My mother's voice greeted me. "Hi Mom, it's been a while," I replied, trying to steady my voice. "That's right, we're family, after all. You're treating us terribly," chimed in my mother-in-law, standing beside him with an accusing glare. I have no idea how they found out, but my mother-in-law and Daniel showed up at the new house. I was too stunned to say anything as they barged in without permission. "This is a pretty nice place, with a garden and all. Quite the upgrade for you," my mother-in-law said, looking around with a smirk. "I wonder where my room is." They seemed to be having a great time, completely oblivious to the fact that things had changed. "I know you're a useless wife who can't even handle basic chores, but I guess you've managed to be useful for once," she added with a laugh. I managed to suppress a grin at her ignorance. Neither Daniel nor my mother-in-law had any clue that we were already divorced. "I'm not your wife anymore," I said calmly. Daniel looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Avery, what are you talking about? We're married, so of course you're my wife." "No, I'm single now. So please leave my house." His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "What do you mean? You're upset about something, right?" "I apologize, Avery. Let's just talk this out. I can't believe you'd lie about getting a divorce. Whatever it is, we'll fix it. My mom will forgive you too." "I don't care if she forgives me or not," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "We're already divorced." I walked over to the cabinet and pulled out the divorce certificate, handing it to him. Daniel studied the document, his face gradually turning pale. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water as he struggled to process the situation. "When did this happen? I don't remember signing any divorce papers." "You did," I said firmly. "The day you got upset about your mother's clothes. You left the completed divorce papers on the table, remember? You've been talking about divorcing me every day, so I took you at your word." His eyes widened in shock as the reality of the situation began to sink in. I had recorded every word spoken by Daniel and his mother and kept a detailed diary of their behavior. Diary, along with the recordings, was meant to serve as evidence. I played back the relevant audio from my smartphone, and there was my mother-in-law's voice criticizing my cooking, along with Daniel threatening, "If you serve food like this, I'm divorcing you." Both Daniel and his mother were taken aback and remained silent, unable to respond. "Since you two are now strangers," I said firmly, "you need to leave right now. I never invited you in. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." They looked alarmed and quickly retreated. I watched them leave and securely locked the door to ensure they couldn't come back. After discovering that my parents and I had purchased a new house, Daniel and his mother had to vacate their home and terminate their apartment lease. They encountered significant difficulty finding a new place to live. For the first time in a long while, Daniel and his mother were living together, and their situation was far from ideal. My mother-in-law, who had always demanded that I handle all the housework, now found herself unwilling to do it, and Daniel, unaccustomed to these tasks, struggled. She boasted to her relatives and friends about moving into a luxurious new home, but in reality, they ended up in a modest apartment. The contrast between her claims and reality led to rumors about her dishonesty. The stress of the situation caused her to take out her frustrations on Daniel. With no one else to vent to, their arguments became frequent and intense. As for me, I'm happily settled in the new house with my parents and my healthy baby boy, who was born safe and sound. My parents have been a tremendous support, and I plan to return to work once my son is older. My goal is to create a loving and joyful home where my son can grow up happy and healthy. Every day I work hard to make that vision a reality, embracing the peace and contentment in my new life. Thank you.